even though we're talking about the TV show, here, have a look at the Star Trek movies 1 through 10 little case here, just so you have something to look at that says Star Trek, because that's the topic of today's video, Star Trek. I've been watching the original series, and I just finished Season 1, all of the episodes, and I really miss back when TV shows used to have 20-plus episodes in a season. Don't you miss that? Like, when you go back and you look at Supernatural Season 1, it had like 24 to 26 episodes. That's crazy. That's awesome, even. And then you look at today's TV shows, and you get 6 to 10. That's the normal now. 6 to 10. Yeah. But I digress. Let's take a look at some of these Star Trek episodes. My favorite ones, that is. The very first episode, syndication-wise, was called The Man Trap, and I actually really, really like this one. It's a mystery episode about a sort of salt vampire type of alien that could shapeshift and to look like any other person, and it needs salt to live. It can eat just regular salt, but if it can't find regular salt, it'll suck the salt out of humans. And that's what it starts to do to Captain Kirk's crew. We open the episode with Bones, who's also with McCoy, who is the ship's surgeon, who is friends with Kirk. That's why he calls him Jim. McCoy knew one of the settlers on this planet that they start to go to, and she's an old flame of his. So McCoy's just all happy to see her and all that stuff, and says, "You don't look a day over the age I met you X years ago." And Kirk looks at her and he's like, "She's got some gray bones." And well, the third person that's with Kirk's crew says, "You know, you look like this one girl I met at this one adult bar I went to." And she looks like this blonde lady, that completely different character, completely different actress. And this insults McCoy, and Kirk says, "Why don't you go ahead and stand outside, friend?" And so he stands outside. And eventually, the characters start to pop out. That guy who said, "You look like that blonde I met at that adult bar that time," the salt vampire kills him first, and then she shapeshifts into one of the other landing party crewmen to get aboard the Enterprise and starts sucking off sucking the salt off of the crew members one by one. And she gets to Spock, but Spock's body is composed of different minerals rather than salt, so she can't get any salt out of him, so Spock survives. And Spock helps Kirk figure out what this thing is, and then McCoy is all conflicted about it. And we learn that this is the last of her kind. This creature is literally the last one of its species. And we make a reference to the buffalo, and how in this present day of Star Trek, the buffalo are now extinct, which probably is going to happen in a couple centuries. The buffalo are probably going to go extinct. It's just an inevitability due to all of human activity and spreading and all that stuff. All of the animals are probably going to go extinct one by one as we run out of space and we start to expand the space, and it's just inevitability until we start settling the stars so we could displace some of the people that are filling up all the... That's talk for another future time, science fiction, science reality, futurism, and all that stuff. But the buffalo are extinct in this setting of Star Trek, and so eventually we have to kill this salt vampire to save the life of Captain Kirk. And at the end of the episode, Kirk's silent for a moment, and somebody says, "What do you? Did you hear me, Captain?" And Kirk's like, "I'm just thinking about the buffalo." And I think it was Spock who said something, so he says, "I'm just thinking about the buffalo, Mr. Spock," or something. Then he goes, "Ahead, warp 1," and then we head out. It's an introspective type of episode. It's also an excellent first episode. It's not the first one that they filmed, but it is the first one that they aired. And I think that's an excellent choice because this one happened after they filmed a couple episodes together. The people are a bit more familiar with one another, so we get to really get a sense of the characters knowing each other, both on and behind the camera, so it was very good to do that. I think The Man Trap is an excellent episode. It's one of my top 5, maybe, for the first season. If I were to talk about the next one in my top 5 in no particular order, it would probably be The Naked Time. The Naked Time is another fantastic episode. I think this one aired a little too early, though. The Naked Time was the 4th episode that aired. It really should have been more like the 16th at the earliest. You needed to have some more time with the characters, and then you throw this bombshell learning about more deep stuff, like especially Spock's reveal. I think this should have been a little bit later in the season, so that when Spock brings out his emotional crazy, we actually get to feel for him a little bit after spending more time with Spock in his logic brain mode. But either way, The Naked Time really was fantastic, especially to show the craziness of all the other characters, with Kirk and Spock especially, when they get infected by this, it's like a virus born on the water, on this dying frozen world. One of the landing party who explores this facility on this planet before the planet blows up gets infected by this unknown alien virus, and this alien virus kind of acts like an alcoholic effect on the person. They end up being very exhibited. All of their inhibitions become exhibitions and all that stuff. And so it spreads with water contact, especially through sweat. And that was a very excellent idea, because during filming, a lot of these actors, they were wearing suits with polyester. And if you know what polyester does when it's already hot outside, man, you'll start to sweat like crazy. So everybody's sweating on this show, especially in the earlier episodes. And I think that was an excellent idea to use the sweat that was naturally occurring on the film to have this sweat waterborne virus spread across the ship. When it finally hits Spock, he starts to fight his emotions. He's fighting it as best as he can, but then his emotions break free, and he starts to break down about his mother and how he never said anything to her because of his Vulcan logic brain, and he confesses this to Kirk, and then Kirk gets infected by it, and then he starts to talk about how he chose the ship and command of the Enterprise over the love of his life. And we get to learn some deep things about these characters that never get brought up again. And that's kind of how this show was written. None of these shows had continuity with one another. You could watch any episode in season 1 in any order, and it would have been fine, honestly. The only episode that I would say you should watch before other things would be The Cage. When you get to Menagerie, you get to watch The Cage, which is the original pilot with Captain Pike, though. So it's up to you whether you want to watch The Cage by itself, or you want to watch the only 2-parter in season 1, which is Menagerie. And I think Menagerie is the better idea because it gives it a sense of continuity. It's the only episode with a sense of continuity because it's a previously filmed episode being referenced and actually shown on the actual episode. You're technically watching the entire pilot of The Cage in Menagerie with modern scenes with Kirk and Spock and everybody else spliced in between watching a video playback of The Cage episode. So that's the only one with continuity to my knowledge. Let's see, what other episode would I like to discuss? I really liked, let me see, which was it? I think it's called Errand of Mercy. I want to say it's Errand of Mercy. If it's not that one, it's probably a different name that I'm getting mixed up. I just watched these episodes for the first time, so the names of the episodes are going to be blurring the longer I wait to make this discussion, so I'm making it now before I forget even more the episode names. But it's the episode where they go down to this planet to try to convince the populace to aid them because the Klingons are coming and they're going to make war, and they're going to use this planet as an outpost because of its strategic location in the galaxy for them to use as supply lines and all that other crap. And so Kirk comes down here with Spock to try to convince these people to help them against the Klingons, and that they can help them against the Klingons. And these people want no part of the violence. They say, we are in no danger, Captain, but you might be in danger. We should get you off-world before the Klingons arrive. And Kirk is completely flabbergasted as to the response. Everybody is so unconcerned. But then the Klingons arrive, and it's too late to leave. The Klingon fleet is here, and Sulu has to get the Enterprise out of there to contact Starfleet to bring Starfleet in for the big space battle up there that you're going to expect is going to happen. This big space battle. You expect some big violence is going to happen, right? Well, actually, no. No, something else happens entirely. Over the course of the episode, Kirk and Spock try to wage guerrilla warfare against the occupying Klingon forces. And the council that Kirk and Spock speak to, the Council of the Natives, are completely flabbergasted as to why you continue to try to do violence when they are in clearly no danger. And Kirk is like, you are in danger. They just killed 200 of your people. I don't want anyone more to die. And so, at the end of the episode, the Elders use this psionic anti-violence force field, galaxy-wide. Meaning all of the weapons that everybody carries, their phasers, guns, whatever, they become really hot in their hands. Everybody drops their weapons. And then they try to attack each other physically. They try to punch each other, try to push each other. But every time they try to connect a move, there's an invisible field that prevents them from physically touching the other person in a way of violence. And they get physically repelled, like magnetically repelled. And we find that this is the same type of thing that's happening in space orbiting the planet. It's happening all over the galaxy. Weapons are just not working. Violence is just not working. These people are extremely powerful in some strange energy way. And they end up explaining, this is why we were in no danger, Captain, because we could do this. And they basically said, well, now that you are incapable of using violence, perhaps you should make peace instead and go about your ways. And so Kirk and the Klingon commander who is occupying the planet are forced to shake hands and go on their merry ways. And the Klingon says, it's a shame. It would have been a glorious war. I loved that episode. It's a fantastic episode that really defies your expectations. Star Trek, the original early Star Trek, defies expectations of what you think is going to happen. Most of the fighting sequences are probably thrown in there because of the big wigs executives saying, we need some violence in here. But outside of that, episodes like this Klingon episode feel like more Roddenberry's vision. The vision of, we don't really need to use violence at big star battles to tell a story like this. This is the future. We have done away with the need for violence, and we find other species that are so advanced that they have managed to erase violence from their culture entirely. The need for violence, the need to force somebody under your will, there's no need for any of that. And so when we have two races that are advanced like the Federation and advanced warlike like the Klingon Empire, and they're still constantly trying to get at each other, with these two factions, which are very advanced, end up looking primitive by comparison. It is fantastic storytelling. I loved the idea of using peace instead of the big space battle. Star Wars is completely different from Star Trek in that we always have to have the big giant battle. But in Star Trek, the big giant battle is the thing that we avoid at all costs. Let me see if there's another episode that I feel like talking about. There was one that I really wanted to mention. And I think it was the one with the Corbomite maneuver. I loved the Corbomite maneuver. What is Corbomite? It doesn't exist. But that's not that's not the point. The point is that the Enterprise comes into contact with this extremely unknown cube thing, and this cube follows them throughout space, and so the Enterprise destroys this cube and tries to go further into space to chart and explore the area and see where this cube came from. And then they meet this huge, giant, flashing disco sphere thing, and they get hailed on the communication saying, "You are a violent, barbaric race. You destroyed our warning, and now we're going to destroy you." And then so Kirk has trying to make negotiations with this unknown being, and says, "We have something that your ship did not scan on our ship, because it's a very secretive substance that we have as a secret weapon for a last-ditch move. It's called corbomite, and it will destroy this ship, but it will also destroy you. So if you try to destroy our ship, we will destroy you and take you with us, yada yada yada." And so it causes the other guy to hesitate and say, "You must tell us of this corbomite. You must tell us if this corbomite exists." And Kirk says, "No. Why would I do that? I'm not going to tell you about corbomite. Just leave." And so they beam across to the other guy's ship after some stuff happens, and they find out that there is no alien race aboard this ship. It's just a baby Clint Howard. Yeah, it's Clint Howard. And he's somebody else is speaking for him, but it's Clint Howard. That was an excellent episode. I love that one. Let me see if there's any other episodes out there that I want to mention here before I close out. The Squire of Gothos. Oh, where would I be if I don't mention the Squire of Gothos? Now, if you've watched Futurama, as I have, if you've watched the old Fox Futurama seasons, the first 4 seasons before it moved to Comedy Central, and we got Comedy Central seasons. So the first 4 seasons with Fox, those are the ones that I have. I have those on DVD. I've watched them so many times. I have most all of the episodes memorized, most of the lines, the most quotable lines memorized. There is an episode where Leonard Nimoy, the only member of the original cast of Star Trek, I think he's voiced by Leonard Nimoy too, he's a head in a jar in the Heads in Jar Museum, and Fry is a huge Star Trek fan, Star Trek TOS fan. And so Fry keeps mentioning Star Trek, and everybody says, "You must not mention Star Trek because of it's taboo." And Fry says, "Why? That doesn't make sense." And so they tell him about the big Star Trek crazy conspiracy, and how the original tapes of Star Trek have been banished to the last surviving tapes have been banished to a planet. And so Fry's like, "Well, let's go find him so we can watch Star Trek." And so they go find Leonard Nimoy, and Leonard Nimoy says, "Oh, I don't know where my castmates are. I lost track of them a long time ago, and I wish I could make up with Bill and become friends with him again," or something like that. And so Fry steals Leonard Nimoy from the Heads in Jar Museum. They get on the Planet Express ship, and they fly out to find the Star Trek tapes. And when they get there, they find Shatner and everybody else, and they have their bodies and their original outfits. And then Leonard Nimoy, he gets his body back as well, and it's a great episode. And at the end of the episode, this extreme cosmic entity that we thought was this godlike being was actually just a child of 2 even bigger godlike beings that say, "Hey, Junior, it's time to go home." And the big, smaller cosmic being is like, "But Mom, I was just trying to play with my toys." and so the parents take Junior and take him home. That's basically the Squire of Gothos episode, almost in its entirety. Kirk and companions find this planet. They beam down. They find the Squire of Gothos. He's this guy who is obsessed with medieval Renaissance era human activity, Napoleon and all these other crazy guys, Alexander the Great and all this other stuff. He's all about violence and warfare of humanity's past, and Kirk's like, "Dude, we've gone away with all of that stuff. We don't do any of that anymore." And the Squire's like, "But Captain, that's just boring." And it's just a fantastic little episode where Kirk has to play against this godlike entity who doesn't really have a life signature, so he can't really detect him, and he can appear anywhere in this area, and he can even manipulate reality orbiting the planet. So when Kirk and crew get back onto the Enterprise, the Squire of Gothos teleports onto the Enterprise and just brings the bridge crew back down to this planet. He's just that powerful. He's just this cosmic entity, crazy. He kind of reminds me of a prototypical Q from TNG, The Next Generation Q. He kind of reminds me of that. I wonder if they took inspiration from the Squire of Gothos for making Q in these personality-wise. Because he was pretty fun. He was a pretty fun character. And then at the end of the episode, his parents, these bigger cosmic entities, come down, and we realize that the Squire of Gothos is just some child of two cosmic entities. And so they take the Squire home, and the cosmic entities apologize to Kirk for their son's behavior, and then they move off, and Kirk goes, they're like, well, that's something, all right. And they head warp back to 1. It's a great episode. It really is. A really memorable and really funny one. The only other one that I would want to mention is, I forget the episode's name. I really do. But it's about the Romulan encounter. There's one episode where we encounter the Romulans. There's one episode where we encounter the Klingons. We don't encounter any other Vulcans outside of Spock. So if we're going to encounter Vulcans, it's going to be in future seasons. So we're gonna figure that out. And Chekhov, he's not in season 1, so he's not in any episode of season 1. We do have a couple episodes in the first handful of episodes, first 9 or so episodes with Yeoman. The blonde Yeoman, she was probably originally meant to be a main character, a main cast member, but something must have happened. She left the crew because we haven't seen her after the first 9 or so episodes. After that, we haven't seen her. She's gone. But I enjoyed that character. I can't wait to see how Chekhov is in seasons 2 and 3. That's probably going to be a lot of fun. Either way, the Romulan episode is another one that I want to mention. I can't remember the name of it, but Kirk and crew are flying towards the neutral zone between Romulan space and Federation space, and we learn that the outposts on Federation space bordering the neutral zone are being destroyed one by one, and they find that a Romulan ship is doing this covertly to try to coerce the humans into moving into the neutral zone, to try to promote a war between the humans and the Romulans, because this is a barbaric, warlike people, just like the Klingons. And so Kirk and this Romulan ship end up engaged in very tactical maneuvers, and we get to learn that the captain of the Romulan ship and Kirk are very kindred spirits. The captain of the Romulan ship constantly underestimates Kirk because he's a human, but then realizes this guy is a tactical genius up in space. And in the final portion of the episode, the Romulan contacts the Federation ship and says, "In another life, we might have been friends." And this says, "I've got to do this, it's duty, Captain." And so he destroys this ship because there could be no evidence of this mission, so he destroys the ship, kills himself out of duty. And it's a sad ending, but it's a very respectable character, very strong character. I'm probably going to remember this performance for a long time, even though I've already forgotten the name of the episode. I will remember this episode, this story. I will remember that for many years to come. Star Trek TOS is fantastic. I can't wait to watch Season 2 and talk about that one next.